Have you ever knelt in desperate prayer, crying out to God for a breakthrough, only to hear nothing but silence, wondering if He's even listening? You're not alone, but the shocking truth is that the problem might not be God. It might be you, and there are hidden reasons your prayers aren't being answered that you need to face right now. First, let's talk about your heart. God sees what you hide, and if you're harboring unconfessed sin, it's like a wall blocking your cries from reaching Him, just as Isaiah 59 verse 2 warns that your iniquities separate you from God. Maybe you're holding on to bitterness against someone who hurt you, or you're secretly indulging in habits you know dishonor Him. Those sins aren't invisible, and they're muting your prayers faster than you realize. You might think, I'm not that bad, but God's standard isn't your comparison to others. It's His holiness, and 1 John 1 verse 9 urges you to confess and be cleansed so your connection with Him can be restored. Now, consider your motives. Are you asking for things to glorify God or to feed your own ego? James 4 verse 3 cuts deep when it says you don't receive because you ask with wrong motives, to spend it on your passions. If you're praying for a promotion just to prove yourself, or for a relationship to fill a void only God can fill, you're missing the point. Prayer isn't a vending machine, it's a surrender, and God won't answer requests that fuel your pride instead of His kingdom. Dig deeper. Are you actually trusting God, or are you praying out of fear and doubt? You might say the right words, but if your heart's screaming, this won't happen, you're canceling your own faith. Mark 11 verse 24 says to believe you've received what you ask for, but doubt is like static, scrambling the signal between you and heaven. Think about it. When you pray for healing, do you immediately start worrying about the doctor's report? Or when you ask for provision, do you obsess over your bank account? That lack of trust isn't just a feeling, it's a barrier, and Hebrews 11 verse 6 reminds you that without faith, it's impossible to please God. Here's another hidden truth. You might be praying for the wrong thing entirely, because God's will isn't always your plan, and 1 John 5 verse 14 says we have confidence when we ask according to His will. You're begging for that specific job, but God knows it'll lead you away from your calling. You're pleading for that relationship to be restored, but He sees the toxicity you're blind to. His silence isn't rejection, it's protection, and Romans 8 verse 28 promises He's working all things for your good, even when you can't see it. Be honest. Are you even listening for His answer, or are you so busy talking that you miss His whisper? Sometimes God's response isn't a yes or no. It's a redirection, a still small voice like Elijah heard in 1 Kings 19 verse 12, but if you're not seeking Him in His word or pausing to hear His Spirit, you'll mistake His guidance for silence. You might be praying for a miracle, but God's saying, take this step first, or forgive that person, and your refusal to obey is stalling your breakthrough. John 15 verse 7 says if you abide in Him and His words abide in you, you'll ask what you desire, and it'll be done. But abiding means aligning, not demanding. Let's go deeper. Are you treating prayer like a ritual instead of a relationship? If you're just checking a box, saying the same words every morning without truly seeking God's heart, you're missing the intimacy He craves, and Matthew 6 verse 7 warns against empty repetitions like the pagans do. God isn't a genie, He's your Father, and He wants your authentic heart, not a script. When was the last time you poured out your raw emotions to Him, even your anger or confusion, like David did in the Psalms? That vulnerability opens the door for answers, because it's in the wrestle that you find His presence. Another shocking reason, your prayers might be unanswered because God's timing isn't yours, and Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 reminds you there's a season for everything. You're begging for that door to open now, but God's saying, wait, because He's preparing you for something greater. Joseph waited years in prison before his dream came to pass in Genesis 41, and your delay might be God's way of building your character for the blessing. Impatience can lead you to doubt His goodness, but Habakkuk 2 verse 3 says the vision is for an appointed time. Trust that God's clock is perfect, even when it feels like He's late. Here's a hard truth. Are you living in disobedience in other areas of your life? If God's told you to let go of a toxic habit, to reconcile with someone, or to step out in faith and you're ignoring Him, why should He answer your prayers? 1 Samuel 15 verse 22 says obedience is better than sacrifice, and your defiance is like a locked door. God won't move until you surrender, because He loves you too much to enable your rebellion. Think about the small things. Are you tithing faithfully, as Malachi 3 verse 10 instructs? Or are you holding back from serving where He's called you? Disobedience in the little things can block the big things you're praying for. One final reason your prayers might be stalled: you're not persisting. Luke 18 verse 1 says to pray and not give up, but too often you stop after a few days, assuming God's not listening. The enemy wants you to quit, because he knows persistent prayer breaks through spiritual barriers, like Daniel's 21 days of fasting in Daniel 10 before the angel arrived. You might be one prayer away from your answer, but you've already walked away. Don't let discouragement win. God's silence isn't always a no. Sometimes it's a test of your endurance, a call to press in deeper, to seek Him with all your heart, as Jeremiah 29 verse 13 promises you'll find Him when you do. So where does this leave you? Your unanswered prayers aren't a sign God's abandoned you. They're an invitation to examine your heart, align your motives, trust His timing, and persist in faith. Stop treating prayer like a transaction and start seeing it as a transformation. God's more interested in changing you than changing your circumstances, because 2 Corinthians 3 verse 18 says He's making you more like Him. Get real with yourself. Confess the sin you've been hiding, surrender the plans you've been clinging to, and ask God to show you His will, even if it's not what you want. Then keep praying, keep seeking, keep obeying, because Matthew 7 verse 7 says to ask and it will be given, seek and you'll find, knock and the door will open, but you've got to mean it with your whole life, not just your words. God's ready to move, but are you ready to let Him? Step into that surrender today, and watch how He answers when you finally get out of your own way.